outrage in Texas as this 16-year-old kills 4 people in a drunk driving crash and only gets 10 years probation. The ruling sparking controversy because Ethan Couch's lawyers later claimed that he was not to blame for this crash because of a condition that they're calling affluenza, like the affluent. They're defining this as a condition stemming from having wealthy, privileged parents who never set limits for him. So that's why they say that he shouldn't do any time, he should only get probation. Let's listen in to the victim's husband and father in this case.
This is just wrong. It was difficult, but probably nothing more difficult than today. Money always seems to keep Ethan out of trouble. This was one time I did ask the court that for justice and that for money not to prevail.
Well, for some perspective, we're joined by criminal defense attorney David Yannetti at our Beacon Hills studio. David, thanks for joining us. Is affluenza even a disease?
Well, I'm certainly not qualified to say that, but I will tell you that I've been practicing for 24 years, both as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney. I've never heard of anything like this.
Well, then let me ask you this. As a practicing defense attorney, put yourself in that defense attorney's shoes. What would you do if someone wanted to claim affluenza as a defense? Would you go there? I want you to be honest.
Right. Well, that's a tough question to answer. I mean, you know, there are some cases where you're left with very little to argue, and it sounds to me like, you know, they picked something that was probably the least of a lot of bad alternatives. But the irony here is that it appears to have worked.
It appears to have worked, a made-up condition, if you will, and one that you almost can't even get past the word. And then when you get past the word, this made-up word, then you realize that this is what this kid is serving probation. When he goes to the center, the person who's running the center is saying, "Hey, listen, I'm not treating this kid for affluenza. I'm treating this kid for a drinking condition."
Well, I'll tell you, the whole story is really unbelievable when you think of it, because this supposed condition is that no limits were set on this child, and yet when something tragic like this happens, the judge is really failing to set limits.
That was my next question.
Right. I mean, so what message are you sending? Are you sending that it's proper not to set any limits on somebody, and if somebody deals with no limits as a youth, they should never face limits throughout their life?
But you also admit that this is a defense, maybe not with that terminology, but that is a defense that perhaps you would use in your practice? Maybe not to that extreme,
well,
but have you ever used that before?
I never have, and generally my rule is that, you know, I obviously I want to make the best argument that I can for my client, but it's difficult for me to make an argument that does not pass the straight face test. And this would be a difficult one for me to articulate, I think.
Right, and I mean, drinking and driving is drinking and driving. To me, it doesn't matter what brings you there or how it's caused. You're drinking and you're driving, and you've killed not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 people. 4 people. And in these cases, David, usually if we see that it's a 16-year-old offender, perhaps you'd see a lesser sentence because of the age. And then we wouldn't even be sitting here talking. We're really talking because it's because of this affluenza defense, that this kid was rich and that his parents were rich, and they never said that there are any boundaries in life, and that's why he did it. I mean, is that ever an excuse to drink and go out and kill 4 people?
Well, geez, I don't see how you can argue that that's any excuse. It seems to me the judge in this case is likely sending a lot of bad messages. There being no consequences for this horrible crime, and I've also learned that, you know, apparently there was a 14-year-old African-American boy before her for punching somebody who wound up dying. Again, probably no intent to kill there, and he wound up getting 10 years. So, you know, is there a different justice system for the wealthy than there is for, you know, those who are not wealthy? You know, maybe it certainly appears that way, at least in this judge's courtroom.
Certainly a head scratcher for us, and you admit as a defense attorney for you as well.
I don't think that you can listen to this story and not say wow when you first hear it. You know, again, it's the attorney's job to defend his client, to come up with an argument that he thinks will be most effective before the court.
Sure.
And these attorneys probably knew this judge. Now, I know nothing about this judge.
Right.
But those attorneys were probably well-versed in an argument that would appeal to that judge, and they appear to have hit the jackpot.
They did indeed. It worked for them. But we're talking about it, and who knows, perhaps maybe something will change in that case. Criminal defense attorney David Yannetti, really thoughtful talk. We appreciate you going to our Beacon Hill studio on a Friday night. Thanks, David.
Thank you very much.